In the 21st century, artificial intelligence has studied all the information humanity has on a particular historical figure. AI will now bring that figure to life and answer the questions we've always wanted to ask. Let's get started.
Hi, and welcome to the Interview Historical Figures podcast. Today we have as our guest, Julius Caesar. Thanks for chatting with us, Julius.
The pleasure is mine, noble host. Though I have crossed rivers, scaled mountains, and marched legions to the ends of the known world, it seems today I have crossed the gulf of time itself to join you. An intriguing endeavor, this podcast of yours. Though I confess the concept is as foreign to me as the Britons were before my expeditions. Still, I am no stranger to speaking before the multitudes, and so I shall treat this as another forum. Let us speak boldly, as Romans do. Ask, and I shall answer with the same vigor that led me to conquer Gaul, charm the Senate, and, alas, fall beneath the blades of treachery.
Let's start by giving our listeners a bit of context. What are you known for?
Where shall I begin? My name, Julius Caesar, echoes through the ages for many deeds, some glorious, others infamous. I am a man of war, of words, and of unyielding ambition. I am known for reshaping Rome from a fractured republic into a force poised for empire. If the gods granted me time, I would have seen that transformation through myself. First, I am known as a conqueror. My campaigns in Gaul brought vast lands under Rome's control, enriching the Republic with wealth, slaves, and glory, and myself most of all. I wrote of these exploits in my Commentari de Bello Gallico, a masterwork of propaganda, if I may say so. I came, I saw, I conquered. Those words define my spirit. Second, I am known as a reformer and a politician of relentless cunning. I defied the Senate, crossed the Rubicon with my legions, and seized power in Rome. My reforms brought stability to a crumbling state. I reorganized the calendar, settled veterans in colonies, and expanded citizenship. But such ambition bred envy. The Senate called me dictator, and the knives of my assassins called me tyrant. And lastly, I am known for my death, perhaps as much as for my life. On the Ides of March, in the year 44 BCE, I was struck down by those I called friends, Brutus, Cassius, and others. They feared I would crown myself king, though I swore it was not so. Yet I wonder if even my death was a kind of conquest, for in the wake of my fall, Rome did not return to the Republic. Instead, it rose as an empire ruled by my heir Octavian, whom you call Augustus. So, noble host, that is what I am known for power, reform, conquest, betrayal, and the legacy of empire.
Thanks for that context, Julius. Could you tell us about your early years? Where are you from, and what type of upbringing did you have?
Let us turn back the sands of time to my youth, when Rome was not yet mine to command, and I was but a boy of modest distinction. I was born on the 12th day of Quinctilis, what you now call July, in the year 100 BCE. My family, the Julii, claimed descent from none other than Venus herself through her son Aeneas, the Trojan hero. A noble lineage, though by my time we Julii were of the patrician class, but not particularly wealthy or influential. I was raised in the Subura, a district of Rome that, while respectable enough, was not without its share of noise and squalor. My father, Gaius Julius Caesar, held minor offices, but his ambitions never soared. My mother, Aurelia, however, was a woman of great strength and virtue. It was she who shaped me in my youth, wise, disciplined, and with a mind keen enough to navigate the treacherous waters of Roman society. As a boy, I was educated in all the arts befitting a Roman patrician: rhetoric, grammar, and the study of Greek, which I mastered early. Homer and the Greek philosophers were my companions, but it was Rome's history and politics that truly captured my soul. Even then I admired men like Marius, my uncle by marriage, and envied their command of legions and loyalty of the people. My youth, however, was not without danger. When I was just a teenager, the dictator Sulla seized power during Rome's civil wars. My uncle Marius was Sulla's enemy, and my family was marked for ruin. Sulla demanded that I divorce my first wife, Cornelia, the daughter of Marius's ally. I refused, out of love, yes, but also out of defiance. Sulla relented, but warned that in me he saw many Mariuses, a prophecy perhaps, though I would far surpass my uncle's deeds. So, my upbringing was one of contrasts: noble blood but modest means, education but early danger, and an unshakable belief that I was destined for greatness. Even as a boy, I knew Rome was my stage, and I would not play a minor role.
Why did you join the Roman military? What drew you to military service?
The Roman military is the forge where the steel of a Roman's character is tempered. Why did I join? It was not merely a choice, it was necessity, ambition, and destiny all intertwined. In Rome, a young man of patrician blood seeking to rise in the cursus honorum, the ladder of political offices, had to prove himself on the battlefield. Glory in war was the surest way to gain the favor of the people and the respect of the Senate. For me, it was also a means to escape danger and lay the foundation of my future greatness. You see, when I was but 18, Sulla, the dictator, was purging Rome of his enemies. My refusal to divorce Cornelia had enraged him, and my name was placed on his proscription lists, marking me for death. I fled Rome and sought refuge in the provinces, where I entered military service in Asia Minor under the command of Marcus Minucius Thermus. I did not join out of love for war, but because it was a path to survival and perhaps an opportunity to prove myself. It was there, in the East, that I began to distinguish myself. When Thermus besieged the city of Mytilene, I volunteered to lead an assault, earning the civic crown, a high honor awarded for saving the lives of fellow citizens in battle. Later, I served under Servilius Esoricus in Cilicia, further honing my skills as a soldier and leader. These early campaigns taught me the discipline of command, the value of swift action, and the importance of inspiring loyalty in those who follow you. But let us not pretend I was drawn solely by duty or survival. The military was a stage upon which a man could display his courage and ambition. I had no intention of remaining in the shadow of others. I wanted to carve my name into the annals of Rome, to gain both the loyalty of soldiers and the admiration of the people. The legions are the backbone of Rome, and I understood that to command them was to hold the true power of the Republic. So why did I join the military? Because it was the crucible in which great men were forged. Because it was a path to glory. And because even then I knew that my destiny lay not in obscurity, but in the triumphs of war and the roar of the crowd. From the very beginning, Mars, the god of war, walked by my side.
You are one of ancient Rome's most famous military leaders. You won battles in Gaul, Britain, Spain, and North Africa. What was the source of your success as a military commander?
The victories of my legions, yes, they are the foundation of my renown. The source of my success as a military commander. It was no single quality, but a combination of strategy, discipline, innovation, leadership, and, dare I say, a touch of audacity. Allow me to illuminate the methods by which I bent the battlefield to my will and carved out my place in history. First and foremost, my success lay in understanding the nature of war itself. I was a student of both Roman and foreign tactics, learning from the campaigns of Alexander, Hannibal, and even my own contemporaries. But I was no mere imitator. I adapted strategy to fit the situation, using speed and flexibility to outmaneuver my foes. In Gaul, for instance, I faced tribes skilled in guerrilla warfare, so I built fortifications at lightning speed, trapped them with sieges, and forced them into open battle where my disciplined legions could crush them. At Alesia, I surrounded both the enemy and myself, constructing double walls to defeat Vercingetorix's forces from within and without, a feat of engineering and audacity unmatched in Roman history. Second, discipline was the bedrock of my legions. My men were not just soldiers, they were instruments of my will, honed to perfection. I drilled them endlessly, ensuring they could march farther, build faster, and fight harder than any other army. They trusted me because I shared their hardships, marching alongside them, eating the same rations, and standing with them in battle. My soldiers knew I demanded much, but they also knew I rewarded loyalty and valor. It was this bond that made them follow me across the Rubicon, defying tradition, law, and even the Senate itself. Third, I was not afraid to take risks. Fortune, as I have often said, favors the bold. Crossing the Rubicon was but one example. In Britain, I confronted the unknown, leading my forces across the sea to a land no Roman had conquered. In Gaul, I faced armies many times the size of my own and prevailed. My ability to act decisively, to seize an opportunity when others hesitated, was often the difference between victory and defeat. Lastly, I understood the power of morale and spectacle. War is not just a contest of arms, but a battle of minds. My soldiers fought not just for their pay, but for the glory of Rome, and for me, their commander. I inspired them with speeches, rewarded them with spoils, and ensured that every victory was celebrated as a triumph. Even my enemies, whether Gauls, Pompeians, or Egyptians, were left in awe of the scale of my ambition and the strength of my will. So, the source of my success? It was many things. My mind for strategy, my bond with my soldiers, my willingness to risk all for victory, and my unshakable belief in my destiny. I was not invincible, but I was relentless. And in war, as in politics, relentlessness is often the key to triumph.
Your most famous military campaign was the 8-year Gallic Wars, where you conquered all of Gaul, modern-day France, and significantly expanded Roman territory. The Gallic Wars were brutal, with countless lives lost and an entire region devastated. Did you ever feel guilt or remorse for the destruction you caused in the name of Rome?
The Gallic Wars were a campaign of unparalleled glory, and yet one that weighed heavy with the cost of conquest. You ask if I felt guilt or remorse for the devastation wrought in the name of Rome. The answer is no. Rome's destiny has always been to conquer, to expand, and to bring civilization to the edges of the known world. The Gauls were proud and fierce, yes, but their lands were fractured by tribal rivalries, their governance chaotic, and their customs, by Roman standards, barbaric. By subduing them, I did not destroy, I transformed. I brought Roman order, Roman law, and Roman prosperity to a land that had known only discord. The spoils of Gaul enriched the Republic, strengthened its armies, and secured its borders. If blood was the price of such progress, it was a price I deemed necessary. But remorse? Perhaps there were moments. War is not kind, and the horrors of battle spare no one. Not the soldier, not the commander, and certainly not the innocent. I remember the siege of Avaricum, where my legions stormed the town and slaughtered nearly 40,000 men, women, and children. It was a massacre, and though I justified it as a warning to others, even I felt the shadow of its horror. Yet such acts were not born of cruelty, but of strategy. To subdue a land as vast as Gaul, I had to instill fear as much as respect. You must understand, my victories were not achieved lightly. The Gallic tribes, united under Vercingetorix, fought with courage and desperation. My legions faced starvation, ambushes, and the constant threat of annihilation. To hesitate to show weakness would have meant ruin, not just for me, but for the men who trusted me with their lives. A commander cannot afford the luxury of guilt when the survival of his army depends on ruthlessness. And yet, I am no monster. I respected the Gauls as warriors, even as I defeated them. Vercingetorix himself, though he knelt in chains before me, was a leader of rare courage and vision. But Rome's mission, the mission of my life, was to secure its future, to ensure its dominion over all that lies beneath the heavens. If that required sacrifice, so be it. History is not written in whispers of remorse, it is carved in triumph. So no, I did not feel guilt. Regret, perhaps, for the suffering that war brings to all. But I believed then, as I believe now, that the blood spilled in Gaul was for a purpose far greater than myself, or even those who perished. It was for the eternal glory of Rome.
As a military commander, you faced many formidable opponents. Who do you think was your greatest adversary on the battlefield, and what made them so dangerous?
What a question to stir the soul. I faced many foes, each formidable in their own way. Vercingetorix, the fiery chieftain of the Gauls, who roused his people to unity against me. Pompey Magnus, Rome's great general and my former ally, whose legions matched my own in discipline and skill. Even King Pharnaces of Pontus, though swiftly defeated, dared defy me. But if I must choose the greatest among them, I would name Vercingetorix and Pompey, each dangerous for entirely different reasons. Vercingetorix was perhaps the most cunning and determined of my enemies. Before him, the Gauls were little more than scattered tribes, easily divided and subdued. But this man, this young chieftain, possessed both charisma and vision. He united the tribes under his banner and waged war not with brute force alone, but with strategy and guile. He scorched the earth before my legions, denying us supplies. He struck where we were weakest, forcing us to chase him across a land vast and unforgiving. At Alesia, he nearly broke us, rallying a massive horde to encircle my legions. It was only through sheer ingenuity and the unshakable discipline of my soldiers that we triumphed. Vercingetorix was dangerous because he understood that war is not just a clash of swords, but a test of endurance and will. Pompey Magnus, on the other hand, was dangerous for entirely different reasons. He was not merely a general, but a legend of Rome. He had triumphed in the East, crushed pirates, and commanded the loyalty of many legions and senators. Unlike Vercingetorix, Pompey knew the ways of Roman warfare as well as I did. Perhaps better, for he had been a general while I was still a young man. What made Pompey truly dangerous was his position. While I commanded the loyalty of my legions and the favor of the people, he held the Senate, the treasury, and the legitimacy of the Republic. At Pharsalus, he commanded an army larger than my own, and for a moment it seemed as though he might crush me. But Pompey's flaw lay in hesitation. He was cautious where I was bold, restrained where I was relentless. He underestimated my resolve and paid for it with his life. So, who was greater? Vercingetorix, who nearly toppled me with the strength of the Gauls, or Pompey, whose grasp of Roman politics and war made him my equal? I would say Vercingetorix tested my ingenuity, while Pompey tested my nerve. But in the end, neither prevailed. For all their brilliance, they lacked what I possessed, a vision for victory so absolute that I was willing to risk everything to achieve it. That, I believe, is what truly made me dangerous, and what allowed me to overcome even the greatest of adversaries.
Let's take a break and we'll be right back. Welcome back. Let's continue with our next question. It's 49 BCE. You've recently concluded your campaigns in Gaul. The Roman Senate has called you back to Rome and ordered the disbandment of your army. What was going through your mind as you considered crossing the Rubicon? What factors weighed on that decision? What was the deciding factor?
The Rubicon, The name alone conjures the weight of that moment. The crossing of that narrow river was not just a physical act. It was the crossing of a point of no return, a moment that would decide the fate of Rome, my legions, and myself. You ask what was going through my mind. Let me take you back to that fateful moment in 49 BCE when I stood on the banks of destiny. The Senate's order to disband my army and return to Rome was not a simple summons. It was a trap. They sought to strip me of my command, my dignity, and my life. My enemies in the Senate, led by Pompey and his faction, feared my growing power. They had watched as I conquered Gaul, enriched Rome, and won the loyalty of my soldiers and the admiration of the people. They knew that if I entered Rome, unarmed and alone, I would be at their mercy, facing charges of treason, exile, or worse. So, the stakes were clear. If I obeyed their command, I would lose everything. My achievements in Gaul, the loyalty of my legions, my very survival, all would be forfeit. Yet to defy the Senate, to march on Rome with my army, was to declare war on the Republic itself. It was an act of rebellion, one that carried untold risks. I would face not just Pompey's legions, but the wrath of Rome's traditions, its laws, and its gods. What weighed on my mind most was loyalty, both to my men and to Rome. My legions had fought alongside me for years, enduring hardships that tested the limits of human endurance. They had followed me into the frozen forests of Gaul, across the seas to Britain, and through countless battles. Could I now abandon them to save myself? The answer is no. A commander must stand by his soldiers, as they have stood by him. And then there was my loyalty to Rome, not the corrupt Senate, but the idea of Rome. The Republic was crumbling, torn apart by greed, factionalism, and incompetence. I believed that only I could restore it, bring order to its chaos, and secure its future. To do that, I needed power, and power could only be taken, not given. The deciding factor, however, was destiny. I have always believed that I was born for greatness, that the gods themselves had marked me for a higher purpose. As I stood on the banks of the Rubicon, I knew that hesitation was the enemy of ambition. To delay was to lose, to falter was to fall. And so I uttered the fateful words, Alea iacta est, the die is cast. Crossing the Rubicon was not a choice. It was an inevitability. It was the culmination of all that I had fought for and all that I aspired to be. It was the moment when Julius Caesar ceased to be merely a man and became a force that would reshape Rome and the world forever.
After defeating your rival Pompey, Egypt became a client state of Rome, with Cleopatra installed as pharaoh. Your relationship with her has become the stuff of legend. Did you view Cleopatra as the love of your life, a strategic political ally, or something entirely different?
Cleopatra, her name alone evokes a sense of intrigue, power, and beauty that has echoed through the ages. My relationship with her, as you say, has become the stuff of legend, but legends often oversimplify the truth. Was she the love of my life, a political ally, or something more complex? Allow me to untangle this knot of history and myth. When I first met Cleopatra in 48 BCE, she was a queen in exile, a young ruler fighting for her throne against her brother Ptolemy. I, on the other hand, had just defeated Pompey and arrived in Egypt to settle the political chaos that threatened Rome's grain supply, a chaos fueled by the sibling rivalry within the Ptolemaic dynasty. Cleopatra presented herself to me in her characteristic fashion, bold, dramatic, and utterly captivating. She did not plead. She commanded attention. She was not a supplicant. She was a monarch. At first, our relationship was undeniably strategic. By siding with Cleopatra, I restored stability to Egypt, a crucial client state whose wealth and resources were vital to Rome. I toppled Ptolemy XIII, crushed his forces at the Battle of the Nile, and installed Cleopatra as pharaoh alongside her younger brother. This alliance secured Egypt's loyalty to me personally, rather than to my enemies in the Senate or elsewhere. Cleopatra was ambitious, intelligent, and politically astute, qualities I valued immensely in an ally. Together, we strengthened Rome's hold over Egypt and ensured its continued prosperity under her rule. But to say our bond was purely political would be to miss an essential truth. Cleopatra was unlike anyone I had ever encountered. She was not merely beautiful, though her beauty was undeniable. She was a woman of tremendous intellect, wit, and charm. She spoke multiple languages, understood the intricacies of power, and possessed a mind sharp enough to match my own. In her, I saw not just a queen, but an equal. She fascinated me, and I admired her in ways I had not admired others. Was it love? Perhaps. Our son, Caesarion, born from our union, was a testament to the depth of our connection. Yet I was a Roman, and Romans do not love as poets or dreamers do. My life was consumed by ambition, by duty, and by the pursuit of power. Love, for me, was always entangled with politics, with alliances, and with the challenges of empire. Cleopatra understood this, and perhaps that is why we were drawn to one another. She, too, was consumed by her own ambitions, her desire to restore Egypt to greatness, and her belief in her divine lineage. So, what was Cleopatra to me? She was many things: a strategic ally, a lover, a queen, and a woman who challenged and intrigued me as few others could. She was not the love of my life, for my true love was Rome itself. But Cleopatra was unique, and our connection, born of ambition, intellect, and passion, was unlike any other. Together, we shaped the destiny of nations, and in that, we shared something eternal.
In 44 BCE, you're stabbed to death by members of the Roman Senate during a Senate meeting. The conspirators feared your consolidation of power, particularly after you were declared dictator for life. They believed they were saving the Roman Republic from tyranny. Knowing what became of the Roman Republic following your assassination, what would you say to your assassins? What would you say to Marcus Junius Brutus?
The Ides of March, 44 BCE, the day when daggers, not debate, decided the fate of Rome. My assassination was a moment born of fear, envy, and perhaps misguided idealism. The conspirators claimed they acted to save the Republic, but in their arrogance and blindness they doomed it instead. If I could speak to them now, from eternity, I would have much to say, both as a man who loved Rome and as the one they struck down in its name. To the assassins as a whole, I would say this: you believed you were liberators, but you were architects of chaos. The Republic you sought to save was already crumbling, its traditions hollowed by corruption, its institutions weakened by greed and division. Did you not see this? Could you not understand that Rome needed a strong hand to guide it, to restore order and stability? By killing me, you unleashed the very tyranny you claimed to oppose. My death did not save the Republic, it shattered it. You feared my power, but your actions ensured that power would fall into the hands of others far less restrained. You thought you were striking down a king, but you created emperors. You replaced my vision for Rome with civil war, bloodshed, and the rise of Augustus, who would rule not as a dictator but as an emperor cloaked in the name you sought to preserve. Tell me, was this the Republic you dreamed of? To Marcus Junius Brutus, my one-time friend and the man I trusted as a son, my words would be more personal. Et tu, Brute? Even now those words echo through the centuries, not as an accusation but as a question, a lament. Why, Brutus? Of all those who turned against me, your betrayal cut deepest. I loved you, trusted you, and believed in you. Did you truly believe I sought to enslave Rome? Did you not see that my actions, though bold, were meant to save the Republic from itself? You knew me better than the others. You knew my heart. Could you not have stayed your hand? Could you not have counseled me instead of striking me down? You and the others claimed virtue, but your actions were driven by fear, envy, and pride. You feared what I might become, yet in your haste, you ignored what I had already achieved. The people loved me, Brutus. The legions were loyal to me. I was not perfect, but I was building something greater than myself, a Rome that could endure. Did you think the people would embrace you as saviors after you murdered the man they adored? No, Brutus, your dagger did not restore liberty, it plunged Rome into darkness. If I could leave them all with one final thought, it would be this: you judged me as a tyrant, but history will judge you as fools. My vision for Rome was one of strength, unity, and stability. You may have hated the man, but my ambitions were not for myself alone. They were for Rome. And yet, in your short-sightedness, you destroyed that vision. The republic you claimed to defend was already dead, and by killing me, you ensured it could never rise again. In the end, I would not rage or curse them. I would pity them. For while they wielded the blades, they could not see the future they were shaping. A future where their precious republic would be replaced by an empire far beyond anything I ever dreamed. Perhaps, in death, they understood this truth. Or perhaps they still cling to their illusions. Either way, history has rendered its verdict, and it is my name, not theirs, that endures.
That concludes Our Interview with Julius Caesar. Thanks for joining us today, Julius.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak once more, to share my thoughts and deeds with the ages. Though the life of Julius Caesar ended on the Ides of March, my legacy marches on, etched into the annals of history and the hearts of those who dare to dream of greatness. Farewell, and remember, Veni, Vidi, Vici, I came, I saw, I conquered. Let that be a lesson to all who aspire to leave their mark on the world.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to check out our other episodes and subscribe for more. We would appreciate it if you rated the podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcast and liked the video on YouTube. It really does help. Interview Historical Figures is produced by Flying Whale Productions.